A very warm good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this afternoon session of MAE-001, Counselling Session number 2. As you have found, the first session, many aspects were discussed, including those of the broad policy areas and the governing structures, as well as the historical background of this very interesting area called adult education. Now, I'm sure this session will be much more interesting because our resource person, Dr. Jalajakumari, PT, who is the Assistant Regional Director at Technology Center, Cochin, she is going into the deeper theoretical and practical aspects of understanding adult education. So, as I told you earlier, it is going to be a very interesting session, and I request all of you to remain steadfastly with us till the end of this session. And before handing it over to Dr. Jalajakumari, it is my proud privilege, as usual, to welcome Dr. Jalajakumari as a resource person for this session. And we look forward to this session. And over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. So I am very much happy again to sit before you to discuss about adult education with our students. So, friends, we were discussing about the concepts or understanding of adult education by explaining a lot of terminologies which are related to adult education, and then we were going through the historical perspectives of historical aspects of adult education, ancient India, medieval India, then post-independent period, and the current scenario of adult education. And at that time, some slides were left, and I was simply telling the key points, and I was not explaining because a lot of points and activities going for adult education establishment and spreading over India was left at that time. So in 2-3 slides, we can just go through that, and immediately after that, we can come to the philosophical background of adult education, where you can have an opportunity to study well the details of learning theories, philosophy of education. Now, you please come that we were telling about the social education programs of the post-independent period. At that time, what were the effective strategies adopted, or how adult education was functioning in all over India. A brief getting into the concepts and the activities done all over India regarding adult education in this particular time means post-independent India is also relevant. I have to tell you that because we are still continuing in that scenario, and a lot of new implementations and its functionality modes are much more developed nowadays. So what was the initiatives taken we have to go through? I already told you that after the medieval period and in colonial period, Wood's Dispatch, Macaulay's Minute, etc. were the recommendations, education commissions of pre-independent India, which made a basis or a basic framework of adult education. In that time, at the colonial stage or at the British period, education was spreading over India not for mass education, but for creating some officials or the professionals to help the ruling government. And it was not given to the public, means the people who are at the lower level of the society. But when it has been democratized in post-independent period, the need of social education through adult education became a major thought of the educationists and rulers. Thus, it happened, and from 1949 onwards, 5-year plans started, and adult education became a major an important agenda in 5-year plans, and along with community development activities, giving importance to agriculture, irrigation, and communication, education, health, and social welfare. So, for all these aspects, means agriculture, irrigation, communication, education, health, and social welfare will be effectively taken place when these aspects are shared in the realm of adult education, because the common public were not aware of the new initiatives of the government. So that basic matters regarding all these items, all these sectors have been shared among the adults to make them educated, because their partnership was very much needed at that time for the development of India. In that way, all the needed activities among the public has been taken into consideration to develop the curriculum and strategy of learning for adult education. At that time, this adult education programs were started at community level. Is the basic governance system, that is panchayat and block level. So block level programs were conducted, panchayat, and then block level programs were conducted to spread over the massive adult education programs. For that, the program was increased from 6 to 10 months, and this duration was divided into several stages, means 5 stages, 5 months each, means 2 stages. 6 to 10 months they have taken and divided into two, and 3 to 5 months programs. If the program is of 6 months, it has been divided into two stages of 3 months one program, again 3 months program, like that 10 months program divided into two. And the first stage of adult education programs were implemented for first 5 months, and then again the second stage, like that. Activities were taken and follow-up activities were given in the second stage. First stage, the imparting of education, adult education in all levels regarding the irrigation, agriculture, communication, and the general education, health activities, social welfare were taken place. And in the second stage, the follow-up study, how it was conducted, what was the effect of the study, like that, it was taken up. Then, the basic approach towards social education.
Yes, one clarification, madam. Of course, these community level activities were all taken up from time to time, and the duration which you are mentioning.
Yes, sir.
But were these based on some field level need assessment that what the community actually required? Because very often what we see in many of these so-called community development programs is that the
Yes, sir.
proper need assessment is not done, and something is imposed from above onto the community, which results in a lot of waste, and later on it is found that it is not exactly what they
Yeah,
required.
exactly.
So in
the
this period,
exactly the later stages of implementation, every study things were, every implemented practices or projects were studied on need based, and assessment studies were also taken place at that time. Sir, you mean?
because in this period, in the previous slide, we were mentioning that in this period 67, I think till 67 or
Yes.
so,
Okay.
so many community development activities, including adult education activities, are taken up in various fields, agriculture, communication, so on and so forth. But were these actually based on need assessment studies? That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, okay.
Was an effort actually made before the implementation of these programs to actually
Okay.
study the needs
No, sir,
for the
no.
community?
At that time, because yeah, on the basis of the I forgot the terminology, on the basis of the Macaulay's Minute in 1835, and till the independent period, means in 1947, just before up to that period, the implementations of adult education was not to cover up the social development of the people. It was just to create a massive awareness, not massive awareness. At initial stage, it was only a massive awareness, and later, as per the need of the community, some sectorial considerations were happened, and that is why these 5-year plans were included on the basis of the need of the community. Community means the public. Yeah, that is why this agricultural communication and education plans were implemented in the first 5-year plans. And in the later stages, first and second 5-year plans, it was strengthening the administrative infrastructure. At that time also, a need analysis and a need assessment were done. Means that is what meant by follow-up studies. So on the basis of the follow-up studies, training facilities and the infrastructural facilities were expanded. And so many libraries were given for people for further readings and their own initiative to impart adult education among the public. And production of so many audiovisual programs were also developed at that stage. And almost 66,000 people were covered in an average level in every block all over India to do the needful functional activities regarding the implementation of adult education everywhere. And it was considered as a project at that time. And the social education officer, including the block development officer and a social education officer were deputed for supervising the activities. And this was helpful to start the developmental programs on grassroots level, because always panchayat level and block level activities will be considered as a grassroots level developmental programs, and they could include a good number of male and female people to impart social education officially. And we were telling that night schools were there at the period of British. In night schools, there were not even getting opportunity for children and female candidates for getting educated. But in this case, daytime classes started, and without the discrimination of men and women, everybody has got opportunity to be in the classes. And it made initiatives to formulate, to develop some community centers like youth clubs, Mahila Samakhya, like that. So many initiatives were taken place. And mandals, adults literary centers, farmers groups, recreation centers, etc. were some of the examples for this type of community formations to impart adult education. And Gram Sahayaks were also trained for this one. And this course content of social education program under community development, that means the program or the curriculum was same only. It was not differing, but the widespread implementation and infrastructure facilities were given more in the next second 5-year plan. And in the Gram Shiksha Mohim or village education campaign was the first successful campaign, literacy campaign undertaken in the independent India during 1950s. Village education campaign. In continuation of that only, in Kerala, we know that Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad and literacy mission programs were there. And that was happened in continuation of this community development programs or village education campaign. And after that, National Board of Adult Education was established in 1969 and Directorate of Adult Education in 71. And the emergence of non-formal education programs were happened on development of these two bodies, National Board of Adult Education and Directorate of Adult Education. Then the Central Advisory Board of Education that implemented or established in 1974, and this was recommending the exclusive emphasis of formal system of education should be given along with formal education. Adult education also has to be implemented. Means widespread of non-formal education was also started at the in the leadership of Central Advisory Board of Education in 1974. Then various plans were developed in relation to these schemes, and appropriate strategies were used for rural and urban institutions separately. In the fifth and sixth five-year plan programs, Directorate of Adult Education identified 65 schemes or programs in different departments of the Government of India. And it has a substantial component of non-formal education for adult education. So some significant schemes we have heard about Krishi Vignan Kendra, Workers Education Program, Nehru Yuva Kendra. Now also Nehru Yuva Kendra is giving a lot of opportunities for adult education training among youth. That is Nehru Yuva Kendra. Then Satellite Instructional Television Experiment, Shramik Vidyapeeth, Rural Welfare Extension, and Family and Child Welfare Projects, etc. are some of the examples of these programs started in the fifth and sixth five-year plans. Then this Krishi Vignan Kendra, they were concerned with the technical literacy and aimed at imparting education through work experience for rural youth. And the subjects they were focusing on agriculture and allied subjects. Then Shramik Vidyapeeth were intended to provide integrated education with the training courses of different categories of urban workers. So the workers, they engaged in several work sectors were utilized for this Shramik Vidyapeeth, and they were taken for giving training, technical training, along with means in connection with their activities, so in connection with their job where they are working. And for this, urban workers were considered, and it helped them to develop their professional competency.
In fact, this SITE program, Satellite Instructional Training Program, that in fact has been the precursor of many of the applications that we have in distance education today. Okay. The one-way visual telecommunication system that we had through the dish antenna. Okay. That was in fact a output of this SITE program. Then many of the other instructional online, not online, basically digital instructional techniques, which were later on adopted by distance education institutions, including IGNOU, I think had a kind of field experimentation during this SITE program. So since we are from the distance education field, I thought a special mention about that SITE program is very important.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, exactly. And in the 1978 to 87, National Adult Education Program was focusing on literacy. Specifically, it was focusing on literacy, and importance was given to literacy as an integral part of individual's personality, and the illiterate were assumed that the poor can rise to their own liberation through literacy. Means dialogue and action. Literacy was initially we were giving literacy for reading, writing, and arithmetic. I told you already 3 R's. But in a later stage, it was little bit developed to develop dialogue and action efficiency of the public, means especially the illiterates, because the personal development of individuals are based on their dialogue and action. This was the educational philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore, because Rabindranath Tagore was giving importance for language education. Then sometimes Guru Rabindranath Tagore was a writer, poet, and he was giving importance to language. Language only make people to express efficiently. if people are ready and if they are trained to express themselves, a lot of individual development activities will be coming out from them, and society will be developed. Like that, Tagore was thinking, and also uh, Gandhiji was also of that opinion that the personality development as a prime important matter or objective of education. On that basis, literacy programs were in the form of continuing education and a little bit highly developed technology aided programs were developed during the period of 1978 to 87. Thus, adult education program focusing on literacy was handled, and this knowledge was also incorporated with the cultural development. And because the literacy mission programs were telling that only knowledge can liberate people. That is what Vishnu Purana says, that sa vidya vimuktaye. Sa vidya vimuktaye means only knowledge is the factor which liberates people. So, beyond the literacy, knowledge development is also became one of the major concern of adult education programs. And with that aim, from 1980 onwards, literacy programs were expanded and connected with university and the university adult education in India. And the University Grants Commission, Dr. under the leadership of Dr. Madhuri Shah, provided 100% of grant for universities to take up adult education programs with it. So this was it was a milestone in the development of higher education like approach in adult education. And so many PhD theses, sir was asking about need-based analysis, etc. Sir was asking, isn't it, sir? So the research studies at that time
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
on
Very
adult
much.
education was also motivated by the university, and the special grants were allotted for doing PhD. And at that time, when before 1980, only 41 PhD degree were awarded on adult education. But in between 80 to 98, within the next 20 years, 18 years, 139 PhD thesis came out. It is very good because the current scenario needs and the already done adult education activities were assessed at that time, and it became the part of higher education and imparted through universities. And in 1986, the functional literacy program of 86 was a milestone in the education scenario in India, because in that period, all over India, the waves of literacy came up like that, and the status of 100% literacy of Kerala is also taken place in this time, and it was declared in 89, but the activities were started in 1986, and the Nehru Yuva Kendra was provided an opportunity to non-student youth to participate in literacy programs to help. Means the youth of the nation were coming out from their residences and from their education institutions to act with the public to promote literacy among mass. That was a very big contribution of these periods adult education programs. And after that, means National Literacy Mission was contributing a lot by implementing developmental literacy programs. Developmental literacy, by name itself, we can understand that it is not standing on the literacy aim, but beyond that, the aim of adult education became the develop cultural aspects, and an important step taken by Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad. Already also I told that the mass literacy campaigns were conducted, and so with so many NGOs. Last class also we were discussing about it. And in 1989, Ernakulam became the first 100% literacy district in India. And in voluntary initiatives, time-bound voluntary initiatives were taken to attain this one, and it became, it found fruitfulness in cost-effective manner, and thus Kerala became the most important literacy program activating state among others in India. So later period activities, now how things are going on, and you know that the equivalency is given now. The adult education programs of India is giving equivalency status of 10th standard and 12th standard. It is also the continuation process of adult education, and literacy, National Literacy Mission is working on that. And now so many curricular developments were implemented, and now the mission is conducting examinations for equivalency tests for 10th standard and 12th standard. And the government has taken policy for giving the equivalency status of their certificates, and these students are becoming eligible to join for higher education in universities even. Thus, it has a connection link between National Literacy Mission, has a connection link with the higher education and earlier adult education programs. Now, we can in the next block. So these many aspects were discussed in the first block of the MAE-001, Understanding Adult Education. That is the name of the course, and MAE-001 is the code for that. With this much explanation, I have to tell you that these were the matters discussed in the first block. Now let us go through the second block. So, Sir was telling about need-based. When an educational activity becomes a socialized activity or an activity for socialization, it has to be implemented in a higher order form, and so many other aspects have to consider into action. On that basis, philosophical, sociological, and psychological basis of education were considered, and on that basis, the developmental programs of adult education were written and framed. Then we also have to a person who is coming to study the adult education program in a broad manner, or for an in-depth study, may definitely they may understand that how the philosophical background of education is linked with adult education programs of India. So let us come to the philosophical traditions that we have that has more relevance in the adult education programs. So on the basis of the need of the society, need of the time, need of the society, rulers, government, and people, activities were taken place, and so many initiatives were taken to develop these adult education programs. So basic theories or basic philosophies, we cannot say purely philosophy, but some traditional concepts were there behind the framing of philosophy of adult education. There are 5 traditions or 5 philosophical matters or ideologies were behind the implementation of adult education program. One is liberal tradition, then progressive tradition, behaviorist tradition, humanist tradition, and radical tradition. This liberal tradition is not as systematic as the other education systems. We have heard about the ideology of education. Have you heard of it? Ideology of education, or idealistic stages of education. I think almost all may have heard of Socrates, Plato, Immanuel Kant. Socrates, definitely, it might have been heard by you. Socrates was one of the oldest educationist, one of the oldest educationists in the modern era. And I'm not telling about the Gurukula system or medieval period, but in ancient uh, literature and in ancient philosophy, Socrates' name is on top. Socrates himself was making an educational philosophy, Socratic method of education. You know that how Socrates was, from his biography, it came to our mind that how Socrates was liberating education from institutions. That is what liberal tradition of education means. Everywhere where we are, education can be taken place. Even if we are sitting in a small shop or in a junction or in some communal groups, we can conduct educational activities by asking questions. Now also, so many uh, gatherings are there. Sometimes in the some evening gatherings are there in the libraries, in junctions. So one person among them, a learned person, a knowledgeable person, will ask something, and the others are thinking on that. They're uh, an interested person, an enthusiastic person can freely engage with the process of education, and it was orally communicated. That type of education is known as liberal tradition of education. Later stages, education, all the educations were institutionalized, formalized. Before that, even in institutionalized education, because some of the homes or the residence of gurus were also education places, and where education was like a Gurukula system, education was taken place through oral communication, and students were hearing very keenly, and they were big listeners. Then some discussions were there, arguments were there, but most of the time the students were listeners of some learned people. That type of education is known as liberal tradition of education. We know that the starting of the adult education was totally like that, and next, after some time, progressive tradition of education came. In progressive tradition of education, student involvement is also there. Like teacher, student is also involved, involving. In behaviorist tradition, it is a little bit progressive. It is a little bit uh, means institutionalized, where deliberate attempts, deliberate conditions were prepared for formal education. I will tell you in very detailed manner just after familiarizing you these terminologies. Then humanist tradition and radical tradition. When in humanist tradition, freedom is there, individual freedom is there, and by utilizing the human powers other than that of the animals, human has a lot of peculiarities. Thought process is different, recognition is different, and freedom is also different, and expression is also different. So, by utilizing that freedom, expression, and thoughts, imagination, one person, one student can also select their learning, their study needs, and they can be involved in the study activities along with the teacher. That type of education is humanist tradition. And in radical tradition, you know that student becomes more reasonable, and the student will be the sum total student centric education system comes in radical tradition. So let us see what all these are in an elaborate way. So freedom comes to study through liberated mind, and all human beings are endowed with reasoning ability to liberate themselves, or reasoning ability is also one of the major aspect of this idealistic education system. And reasoning means, you know that how Socratic discussions were going on. When Socrates asked one question, all the disciples were thinking on that. And on the basis of the reasoning of this disciples, they were bringing out so many interpretations of what question was aroused from the guru or the teacher, like that. But the problem is that only the one higher level thinking people can involve in this type of, this cannot be a massive type of education. The people who are coming to this type of education, if some experts are imparting education and imparting knowledge, and the very interested enthusiastic um, people can only engage with this top down system of education. This top down system of education, there were also some curriculum, but that particular knowledge was also always imparted from an expert only to, and the common people were not involved in that. Very very um, much enthusiastic and liberated people were only engaged with this one. And while taking this progressive education compared to this liberal education, progressive education was much more involved in learning by doing, and vocational type of education, etc. So in progressive education, teachers are organizers, and the education, progressive education, was mainly for problem solving, and experiences were there. And that education, because problem solving, problem is always there in life, so never problems end. Problems are always coming like waves in the sea. So a learner has to solve the issues of their life, has to solve the issues of their profession. So continuously that person has to go ahead through education. Thus it becomes lifelong. That's what the peculiarity of progressive education. That is for the progress of the community or the individual or the system. So this pragmatism of education, or the progress of the education, or the problem solving outcome of the education, becomes the part of progressive education, and that is also always be the basis for adult education. Adult education is for individual and society development. So definitely this attitude of the common people, who is having a tendency to go ahead in a professionalized manner, were always attracted by the philosophy of progressive education. And the behavioristic theory, it is, I told you that it is institutionalized, and some people who are specifically interested to some particular courses or programs, they are going day to day basis to some institutions to get educated. And in a formal way, these people are approaching, and all the learning strategies like normal formal education system, the adult education system is also taken, is considered, and education taken place where this behavioristic approach is there. Their education packages are there systematically on time bound activities. It has to be completed. That is also for some vocational training, professional training, and some in service programs like that. Behavioristic patterns of education is also going on. Like that in humanist approach, once I taught that always that type of people wants to be benevolent to the society, and definitely these type of people are gifted people, and they are working for the society and for others and for the whole human being, and they always have a humanistic approach, not for individualistic benefits or profits they are working, but for a humanistic approach they have. And this is also always needed for a growing society. And in radical situations, the fundamental role and the purpose of education to bring about radical social and political economic change. Radical change in political, social means it always focuses for the development of the entire system, not only the individual, not only for the cultural development, but for the nation itself, its political status, the economic conditions of the society and nation has to be changed. That type of thinking and activities focuses on radical philosophy of education. So radical philosophy is coming under critical pedagogy. You don't know what is critical pedagogy. I think sometimes if you are you have learned earlier some educational aspects of um, aspects in any of your degrees, you might have been clear about all these terminologies. But for the students who are taking first adult education, means the part of education one discipline, I think a little bit more explanation is needed for all these matters. So simply I have um, prepared some diagrams, some figures to understand this one. And one more point is there. After that, I will give you.
Madam, one doubt. This humanist tradition is more or less similar to the liberal tradition, isn't it, ma'am?
Liberal,
A lot of
yeah,
commonality is there, I suppose.
commonalities are there because the ideological aspects of humanists and this liberal tradition was equal, sir. But humans are more progressive in thinking.
Okay.
That is a difference. And their knowledge is not for theoretical learning, but in action.
Okay.
They will act for some purposes of the society.
Okay.
There, they will give more liberty to the students also.
Okay.
So their role is always as a facilitator or helper. But in this liberal tradition, the expert is always on top.
Okay.
As per the thought of the expert, the disciples are also thinking, and that following up is there.
Okay. Okay.
That is a difference between.
In fact,
So
there is a lot of overlap. I think some overlap between humanism and radical thought also.
which ones are radical?
Radical and humanism.
Yeah, overlapping will be there, but radical humanists are also yes. Sure, what you are telling is absolutely correct because they are also self-directiveness. They are telling openness and cooperation is also there, but a little bit we can add in radical thinking that this critical approach.
Okay.
Idealistically uh, enthusiastic people who are idealistic and at the same they are living and acting for some good activities in the for the society, but they
Okay.
are not really criticizing the current system.
Okay. Fine.
They are contributing for the development of the society, but not on the basis of the presently going on things and reflections on that.
Fine.
But in radical system, it is actually on the present activities going on.
Okay.
They are not believing in the past.
Fine.
They are expressing their views and they are criticizing. And they are always for newness, radical
Fine.
approach. Yeah. And in between, one more philosophy we can say that is eclecticism. That is everywhere, not only in educational philosophy, in every aspect. This combination of the several other philosophies and people who are interested, but they are not objecting any of the philosophy, but the good things of each philosophy they will take it out and they will create for a new one where the good contributions of are the what is that? What to say? The good impacts of everything will be there. So, as an essence of almost all the um, existing theories will be taking, and they will create a new one like that. Some people are like that, especially in the field of designing and all. We can see that what all existing things are there, they will take put together all the traditions, all the activities, and they will mix it up for a new thing. That type of one approach is there in eclecticism. Eclecticism is everywhere in our cultural life. So to make it simple, uh, see here what is, then every these philosophies, teacher has a role, student has a role. what is the role of teacher in each and every tradition? In liberal tradition, teacher's role is an expert's role. Teacher is instructing. I think you get it clearly from this picture. Isn't it? In progressive
Yes, sir.
tradition,
That's fine.
yeah. In the progressive tradition, yeah, the role of the teacher is a manager's role. Manager, manager is looking after everything, controlling, but liberty is given to the students. That much liberty is not there in liberal. In the name, it is liberal, but that liberty is not for the students, but the system is liberal because it is following the already existing a tradition, simply without making complicated, without making any innovative thoughts to the system. The system which is going on, and we are following to the traditions. But in progressive philosophy or in progressive tradition, the teacher is giving little bit freedom to the students, but he is the controller. The action takes place from the side of the students. In behavioristic trend or in the philosophy of education, there the teacher is an organizer and guide. What is the difference between manager and guide? Manager is managing and owns all the uh, control, only on the basis of the control of the manager only, but little bit freedom is given for the students. But in the behaviorist, the teacher is an organizer. Teacher organizes everything. So in an organization, very systematically, that system is going on, and teacher guides the students how to do, how to go, like that. But in humanistic side, teacher is a facilitator and helps. Teacher won't do anything. Guiding and helping is different. Guiding is sometimes it is instructing that this way you have to go. But in helping, what they need, that only given. But in radical, provocator place is there for the teacher, and teacher suggests. The suggestion is also, this is suggestion. It doesn't mean that all the students or the system has to take as such the suggestions given by the teacher. But it helps the teacher, student to take their own decisions. Like that, the role of the teacher in these philosophical background of education. The same is for adult education. Everywhere, implication of education philosophy is there in adult education. So when we are thinking, looking in the different types of education, adult education, in earlier stages, if one gathering is there at the night class, there is simply the students are listeners, and the teaching curriculum is not prepared by any of the person. And early in ancient period or in earlier some books, it is written like that. The same thing is given to the student. So a massive education means there is nothing else. Only the quantitative side of the educated people are increasing. The quantity to be increased. That was the main objective of that. But the liberation will happen definitely, because most of the people are getting into the process of education, and they are hearing something new, and here they are, because till that time they were living in a separate world, but they are knowing about the outer world through some books or through some experts. That's all. That will go, and finally, if they are getting some certificate or otherwise also, no issue. But they will be interested to learn something from some others. Their own contribution is very less there. But in all the other systems of education, traditions of education, students are gradually coming into the field with their own contribution. In a radical system, see what is happening. Student has a role to think. Even the student is able to prepare or contribute to the curriculum. Thus the role of the teacher and the student will change gradually. So in the adult education systems, we can see it. In nowadays, what type of education has to be taken for my own development, that I am deciding, not the teacher or the government is deciding. And with the education I got, I can reflect to the system, to the present system, which is ruling us, or to the even to the education system, we can reflect like that. So all these have been included in the curricular framework and for developing the adult education system. See, what is the role of the learner then? Both have been discussed actually, I think, but a little bit specification for the clarification, and again telling that the role of learner. Here the learner is sitting, and in liberal education, this is for ultimate knowledge. And the people who are highly enthusiastic, keen learners are only participate in this type of education. It's very serious learning, and the people who are interested in that type of a thorough learning, especially the learning of philosophy, the spiritual education, religious education, like that, people are coming, and that learning is not merely for some training, or but it is a conceptual learning. It takes place by the involvement of all sense organs, Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, like that. That type of serious involvement of the learner is needed, and tough practices of the education will going on in this type of education, and the learner should be like that. But the progressive learning, the learner is studying something for the problems to be solved, for the solving of the problems. For that, they acquire some skills. For a particular skill, they are studying to face some of the life issues, and using that skills, they were trained. They are solving their problems, in life problems. And in behaviorist uh, learning, the student has to go through a programmed learning, like practice means the student has to sit, do the assignments, exercises, repeated studying, examinations, like that. So many exercises are there, almost similar to the current school system and all. So that type of education is also there. We were telling about the National Literacy Mission, equivalency test, etc. For that, they have to study a particular curriculum. They have to study. They have to go through seriously, very systematically through the textbooks provided. They have to write the assignments. In distance education also, it is like that. It is also a type of adult education, and very systematically we have to go through the learning activities on the basis of the pre-planned, programmed systems of education. There, classes will be there, experiments will be shown, demonstrations will be there, and student has to take down the notes. They have to by heart it, they have to read it, they have to refer it. Assignments have to be prepared, submit, like that. That type of learning activity, the type of learning activities are taken place in behavioristic philosophy of education, and students are, a learner has the role in a programmed learning. Like then, in humanistic learning, the student is highly motivated and self-direct. The student himself is planning to go for this. In the programmed learning, sometimes it may be because of the compulsion and inspiration of some others people. You have to go there to attain something, and that will only help you to go ahead, like that. Sometimes the peers or the system or the family will try to send you for education. But in the humanistic approach, it's a the highest self motivation is there in humanistic tradition. and the learner is highly motivated and self-directed. They have to learn a lot as their own. Materials will be there, study materials will be there. They have to learn themselves, their interpretation, their thoughts, and their metacognitive aspects are coming there. When they are getting a study material or a concept, the student themselves they will analyze it, and the learning outcomes will be on the basis of their thought process. Like that, the humanistic tradition people who are coming from adult education, and all these are needed for framing the adult education system. Finally, the radical system, again, the role of the learner is almost it is equal with the teacher. Both of them are engaged in the process. Teaching, learning process are equally going on, and their personal autonomy is also there. Student has all liberty to reflect, select, like that. Finally, ask sometimes more than that of the teacher, a student may be a decision maker in their life. These are the some philosophical backgrounds given basically in the adult education system. And now I'm trying to connect it. The already learned five philosophical, five or not five, six, reflect this eclectic also, connecting with the currently relevant learning theories. So the learning philosophies are being connected with learning theories. In the liberal and behavioristic education. Behavioristic education, so see the how it has been given. Liberal higher tradition, idealistic education is more. Idealistic education is always from a source to knowledge comes from an expert to a top to down system, an expert to a student. Student is always like a disciple, and the teacher is always like a superior person as a guru, like that. But in the behavioristic model, conditioning is there, habit formations are there. For that conditioning only, we have learned. I was telling that programmed learning, like very systematic learning activities are there. Pre-planned learning system is there. Daily, even in coaching classes also, this behavioristic approach is because it's a training for a particular specified goal. It is a training. This is on the basis of the classical conditioning theories of learning. I think sometimes some of the students may be aware of this classical conditioning. I'll tell you what it is. Classical means it's the oldest one. Because when we are formally, systematically teaching a student, the student has to involve like a trainee. The teacher is in the position of a trainer. In classical conditioning, it's known as Pavlov classical conditioning. Pavlov's classical conditioning is this conditioning is for giving an external inspiration, for external stimulus to study well or to respond. If a student is very enthusiastic, or a student is feeling that he is in need of some particular study, or he needs to have some information, in that situation, in a when the organism is having a stimulus, the system created for education will give him a stimulus to go ahead. By giving, by that stimulus, the organism will respond. An experiment is a famous experiment is there. A hungry dog is put in a cage, and the hungry dog is having a stimulus, that is its hunger, and we are keeping food outside. So naturally, this stimulus and response, the dog has a tendency to salivate by seeing food. So what is in the classical conditioning is that if an organism is having a natural tendency to respond to something, that we will take out. And what we will do, we will add to that natural stimulus and to respond artificially means the natural tendency of the dog to salivate by seeing food is a natural stimulus and response. What the experimenter did, the experimenter rang a bell when the dog is getting food. Immediately at the time of just before giving the food, a bell will ring. So salivation is a natural tendency of the dog. Food is giving to the dog, and along with the salivation food, a bell will attach. Gradually, what will happen? When the food is taken out and the bell is ringing, that time also the dog will salivate. How it happened is a natural stimulus is connected with an unnatural response will results natural stimulus is connected with artificial stimulus will result a natural response. So salivation is a natural response. Prior to the bell also salivates. After the bell also salivates. That is natural response. So this seeing the food is a natural stimulus. And the artificial stimulus bell is connected with the food. So what happened? The natural stimulus is connected with an unnatural stimulus. The same response will occur. Means if a student has a natural tendency, should be connected with an unnatural study pattern or a study material or a study concept, naturally with the connection of the unnatural stimulus and the natural stimulus connected with, and finally the student will not be able to identify both, and naturally the student will study things. So every time, known to unknown, we are connecting the study concepts for the students, and students are studying. So this is a training. This type of training is going on. How children are studying in small classes, you just imagine. They have so many. Playway method is always like that only. Children have a tendency to play. So the study concepts will be incorporated with their play. Finally, it's not for play, but through play they are trained. Finally, our objective is to make them trained in the particular arithmetic or singing or dancing or a study concept. So along with the play, the student will get the study concept also. So that will occur naturally by joining this natural and unnatural stimuluses. Natural stimulus is playing tendency, and the mathematical problem or rhyme to study will be given through an action song. So the concept of the rhyme will be taken by the student by connecting both. This is what conditioning. This is what conditioning. Like that trial and error. Sir?
I have a doubt. Like this conditioning technique, I feel it's more useful for, as you said, training and such other things, where fixed way of thought or fixed way of calculations or certain pre-designed matters are there. For example, in entrance coaching and all that, there are certain pre-designed techniques with which you have to go ahead. And in order to achieve success, the same path, maybe through more and more practice, you can reach
higher order conditioning, sir. That is trial and error.
Okay.
In which I was about to say so, because this is naturally happening in the study and learning of small children.
Okay.
But a little bit, but training, coaching, etc. are given in a higher class, no?
Yeah.
There, this training habit will be developed in much more a higher manner. That is, conditioning will give us exercise. I was about to tell it, because if a hungry cat, is put in a cage, outside some fish is there. Definitely, by seeing the fish, the cat will try to come outside. And in the cage, so many livers are there, and this cat will try to come out, and he will press on each and every lever. On a particular lever, when the cat presses, the cage will be opened and it can come out. That is the experiment. After doing so, and again the cat will be put inside. So the experimenter was counting the trials. So gradually, what will happen? The trials will be less and the success will be more. This conditioning is used in coaching and that type of. They are making the students to do so many trials.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. When we go in for this kind of conditioning methodology in education, maybe we are not, in fact, encouraging the students to think laterally, like think broadly about issues that concern humanity, or things such as
Nothing.
yeah, which are of broad thinking. What happens on the international sphere, what kind of effects a particular event can have later on a country. Such things we are not encouraging the learner to adapt to and to reflect upon. It is a straitjacket kind of scenario.
Actually, I'm not so that much clear about, because some net issue is there. That's why I'm trying to hear you.
Okay. I think what I was mentioning was that it is more of a straitjacket.
Yes.
In a fixed manner, you have to go to achieve success in a certain aspect. Whereas in modern education, not only in modern education, but in liberal arts and all that, you need a lot of lateral thinking as well, where a lot of societal and other aspects can come in.
We are using another philosophy, sir. This type of philosophies in the earlier stages when.
That's my point. That's my point. Just to emphasize upon what the facts of the case are. Of course, I know you will be coming to the future aspect, the developments on this and all that. But the liberal and behavioristic aspects, maybe this can be even a kind of negative, a minus point to that kind of a thought.
Yeah, definitely, because that is what the great educations are always telling, that this coaching and tutoring like things are not for a higher order education. It is for some immediate goal achievements.
Exactly.
And after that, they will forget everything.
Yeah, exactly. Only for that particular period.
Yeah, only for that. That's why. That is what the problem. That is why radical educations and humanist education, it came pragmatic conditions also. Constructive education came only on the basis of that. They were against on that type of education. But when nothing was there in a world like adult education, at that time, people could train some of the people. That's only. But that also to be learned as a philosophy of education.
Definitely. I was just pondering upon the lateral aspects.
Yeah, so still in this coaching, and even for UGC net examination, people are going for coaching.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the competitive exams are like that.
Most of the competitive examinations are like that only. But on the basis of the objectives of learning, when progressive education came, it is not like this one.
Yeah, definitely.
And in the trial and error also so many, because law of exercise is there. And this exercise is not, you are continuing the exercise, definitely extension will happen. All the matters learned will go out. That is also there. And only continuous exercise can affect it. That is law of effect in conditioning. Then it has given way to progressive education. There, John Dewey, Mahatma Gandhi, everybody was telling about learning by doing. So in the cognitive development aspects, if our by-hearting type education won't result in for a futuristic plan. But when we are doing something, our personal involvement will be there. That is experience-based learning. That again given way for pragmatic education. Pragmatic education is totally practical and scientific and experiential. If a student he doesn't have any experience on a particular learning, we cannot consider it as education. That is what pragmatic philosophy. So all the constructive type of education in humanist and radical type, constructive education came. That is what humanistic education. Humanistic tradition made the constructive education. It's a new thinking of the enthusiastic people, and they are creating a new world constructively with a divergent thinking. And in radical type of education, what happens? Issue based learning is coming, and reflective learning. Sorry, one spelling mistake is there. Reflective learning takes place. So issue based learning. Issue based learning is for problem solving. What is needed according to time and the social needs. Education has to be created like that, and people have to. Why I am not telling more? Because it comes again. So, development of philosophy of adult education and lifelong. So here, constructive education, issue-based learning, and reflective learning. We can stop there, but it is coming again in the development of philosophy of adult education and lifelong learning. Lifelong learning in the sense, it is there. We cannot the progress of the people, the thought of the people, their contributions to the society cannot be stopped anywhere. It will go ahead like that. Education will also go with them. That is, here comes the relevance of developmental theories of education. This behaviorist theories, associations theories, developmental theories comes. The developmental theory is cognitive developmental theory, because people may have to think constructively, not just following the knowledge of somebody else. Some people, they have written somewhere, they have wrote somewhere, and we are just following and swallowing and reproducing somewhere for getting certificates. This type of one quantitative side of education is also there, but that is not enough for the development of the society. That is not the meaning and objective of adult education. Education has identified this one, and they started to implement cognitive development models of learning. Piaget, Jean Piaget is one of the most popular name in this field. So many are there, but in your syllabus, you have to learn about Piaget only. He is 1896 to 87. He is famous about the stages of development. Why these stages of development? Adult learners, we are thinking that all adult learners are not of the same stage of development. Their conditions, their mental conditions, their social conditions, their philosophical background, their psychological background, everything has to be studied. For that, the basic, that type of consideration in education started at the time of Jean Piaget. And Piaget was telling that every student has to be put in the learning process on the basis of the stages of development. I don't want to, it's mentioned in the study material. So just I have to tell you that some different stages are there. Sensory motor stage. He's telling the first stage of development of a child. Sensory motor stage means the response of the student, child, on the basis of the sensory impressions get. If cold is there, if it is cold or hot, the child will respond accordingly. Means what all if one thing is not present in front of the child, child is thinking that that thing is not ever. It doesn't exist. Like that, the child will think. If mother comes in front of, at that time, child will laugh, smile. If mother went to the office or somewhere else, a child won't be thinking about that particular stage. After 2 years or before that, nowadays it is not, the developmental stages are different, because in the IT developed scenario, even a 1 year old child is very much sensitive and something beyond. Now the new generation is beyond these developmental stages. Even though stages what he has mentioned, I have to tell you that he is telling that 0 to 2 years. That is what sensory motor. According to the sensations received, motor actions are coming out. Only on the basis of the sensory impulses or means stimulations the child is getting, the child can respond. After that, in between 2 to 4 years, for that is later childhood, at that time, even if mother is not at home, child identifies that mother is there, but she is somewhere. That is why she cries or he cries to see mother, because mother is there. Before that, you can go anywhere by sending the child to some other person. No issue. You can leave the child at home with somebody's care. No issue. But after that, the child identifies, he memorizes the things, and the child identifies something is there, even if it is not present in the physical form. That development is there. So the memory imprints and experiences will be starting in the as imprints in the brain of the child. At that time, how to teach, how to develop curriculum. So only concrete things and sensible things can be taught at the small classes, pre-primary stage and all. But cognitive development will be different at the concrete operational stage, third stage. At that time also, concrete things are needed. When we demonstrate something, child will learn. Child is always wishing to see something related to the learning concepts. But in the formal operational stage, there is no need of concrete things. Even in abstract things, child will study and learn. They can imagine about the light year, atoms, nucleus, proton, electron, and they can see the movements sometimes according to the appreciation level of the student. Sometimes they may see as a dancing, like we have seen that Tare Zameen Par. So imagination comes. Whatever things we are telling, not only on the basis of the concrete objects in front of the student is studying, but beyond that, their imagination, their previous experiences, everything will come to conceptualize the learning matters. That's what that different developmental stages. What is the relevance of that here in this adult education? You just imagine. What is the relevance? The relevance is according to the, not about the child development stages, but adult development stages are there. Adults also developmental stages are there. 30-year-old person is an adult. The need of an adult of 30-year-old or a professional will be different from that of an adult of 80-year-old literacy program person, a person who is engaged with the literacy program. And their memory will be different. Their learning experience, their grasping power, their motivational stage, their time, their physical condition, health, everything will be different. According to that, we have to implement the educational standards. That is what the implication of developmental stages of developmental theories in adult education. Like John Dewey. John Dewey is a little bit higher than that of this cognitive, because his learning theories are on the basis of social learning. Democracy and Education is the book he wrote. Another book is Experience and Education, which means experience-based education. He is the person who developed pragmatism, learning by doing. When in our period, I think it is ridiculous to say also, because in our period, When we were studying chemistry in schools, at that time, government schools were not like nowadays school. Suppose the teachers were showing a chalk, and suppose this is a test tube, like that. But now, even in small classes, students are taken to labs, and real-time experiences they are getting for the scientific terms or scientific experiments. Field trips are there. Students are taken to fields. If geography is the subject for studying, they will be taken to a particular geographical condition to study about it. If they are studying about rivers, the students are taken for uh, a trip in the shore of a river, like that. That is what experience based learning. Then there is no need of that type of elaborate verbatim explanations. Learning by doing, learning by experience. And what is democracy? As per the need of the society, as per the need of the generation. In my period, there was no IT education, but now without IT education, no education system can survive. That type of democracy was implemented by John Dewey, even though he was of 1980, 59 to 52. Before that itself, he implemented all the possibilities of newness, novelty in education. And another, Antonio uh, Gramsci, he was against the Gentile reform education of fascism. At the time of Hitler, he introduced a new curriculum by withdrawing all the earlier government's curriculum. And this person, this Antonio Gramsci, was against, he was reflecting, reacting against the pedagogical aspects of that Gentile reform of that time of Hitler. And what was his peculiarity? He was the person who introduced critical pedagogy, because people have to criticize. Education is for criticism of the current scenario, the present days. And what is the relationship between life and pedagogy or curriculum? Curriculum is for realistic life and life experiences to solve the realistic issues of our day-to-day life. And he is telling that this is the famous writing of him, of Antonio Gramsci. Every relationship is pedagogical relationship. How beautiful it is! You just imagine in the aspect of lifelong education, all the relationship is a pedagogical relationship. Means every experience is a learning experience. That does it mean? And Paulo Freire, I told already, is a conscientization. Conscientization means for the development of the existing system. Pedagogy of the oppressed. This also I told. This is the main motive, motto of Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire was also for social education and democracy of education and reflective thinking. I told yesterday that banking of education, today's our education is just banking the information, and students are mugging up and they are reproducing it somewhere. No effect. It has no effect. Even several times I told this point that an MSc holder in physics, a person who is an MSc degree holder in physics, he doesn't know how to change at least the bulb at home. There is no use for that type of education. That is why alternative education system came. That is why deschooling came. This has been told last class, I think. So, the useful philosophy, useful pedagogy, and people has to be trained. People have to be trained for developing democracy in education, and on the basis of democracy of education, we have to be trained. Then, sir, are you there? Can I have 5 minutes break?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Only 3 minutes I need. Just to,
No. Please go ahead. You can take as much time as you want. No problem.
Okay. Okay. after that, I think half of the time is there. A lot of things are there to explain also.
Sure.
Okay, then okay. Let it be there like that. I will come back.
Yeah. No
Hello. Now, friends, we have stopped the philosophies of adult education. Now, let us go through the educational philosophy of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, you know, our Bapu, Mahatma Ji, and then Rabindranath Tagore. These are the two next Indian seminal thinkers for Indian education movement, national movement, and who contributed a lot for national education, especially on adult education. One second, please. Let me put it on slideshow mode. Okay. So, what about the adult education philosophy of Gandhiji and Rabindranath Tagore? This has been mentioned several times. Just I was giving a hint regarding uh, Mahatma Ji's education contribution. I think the most eminent personalities in the contribution of Indian education is Mahatma Gandhi because his contributions are there in idealism, naturalism, and pragmatism of education. Because Mahatma Gandhi was telling about was mainly for pragmatic education. If we ask whether he is an idealist, yes, because he told education is the uh, process of all-round development of human being. If a person is telling that ultimately the all-round develop education means all-round development means mind, body, and spirit. So all these aspects are coming under the idealistic philosophy of education. In that way, we can say Gandhiji is an idealist. But when he says education has to be taken place in the social situations, in the philosophical background, at the same time in a social background of the student. And Gandhiji was always telling that the development of a nation is always taken place in rural areas, in villages. And a child has to be considered in a natural setup. Child has to be grown, uh, um, nourished, or they has to be nurtured in a natural setup. Then we will think he is a naturalist. Yes, of course. Again, Gandhiji was telling that education has to be taken place in an effective, experiential manner. And what is needed for the society and for the individual, that type of education has to be provided. That means education is pragmatic. Hence, we can say that Mahatma Gandhi's education philosophy is based on his idealistic, naturalistic, and pragmatic philosophy. And he was telling that learning is not mere for 3 hours, or literacy is not for 3 hours, but for 3H. What is 3R and 3H? 3 R's, you know, reading, writing, and arithmetic. That is 3 R's. But 3H, that is heart, hand, and head. Heart, hand, and head. Heart means mind. This relates the listening aspect of learning process. We are listening something by heart. We are listening. If we are practicing something or if we are doing something, it is hand, related to hand, means our motor activities. So, listening with interest and a good attitude with a very much appreciation, that is what hurt. Little bit more we have to add on. And when we are involving in that activity, in the learning process, it is hurt. When we are again thinking on that in a divergent manner, and we are recreating something in a creative manner, and if we are reflecting on that to innovate it, that is what head. So, in a cognitive learning is needed. At the same time, a psychomotor approach is needed. At the same time, learning through sense organs with appreciation is also needed. These are the changes from 3Rs to 3H. That's what Gandhiji was telling about education. That is why he emphasized vocational education. Vocational education, every child should be trained for at least a vocation. And occupational based education for our bread and butter aim is one of the most important thing for education, or aim of education according to Gandhiji. And that is what we know as basic education, or the historical thing in history of education is Nai Talim. Nai Talim is basic education. This basic education is highly emphasized in the new policy of education of current scenario, the 2020 NEP. It is telling that basic education implementation as vocational training, even for little children at the school, has to be trained for doing something for their development of their occupational attitude, to engage with by hand in some interested works, to find out the vocational skills of a child, and to engage the child to do something creatively. We know that how Indian education was going on. If we are educated, we always seek for a white collar job. That's why this non-employment problems were there in 1980s, 1990s, and now children are able, students are able to do something. In that, we have to follow the Western education, Westernized education systems, where children are engaged with some work with the amount they are earning from that, they are learning. So, learning for earning and earning for learning. That is what the basis of this vocational based education of Mahatmaji. So, education should not be taken place with the contributions of somebody, and free education should not be given. You work for earning and gain something, and spend that money for your education and livelihood. That's what Gandhiji told. So this is one of the best contribution for education, and this is one of the basic motive and philosophy for adult education, we can say, because all adult educations are in one way or other, it is a training. Maybe sometimes for personal development, for cultural development, or for professional development, or to get some occupation, or for livelihood. This adult education is important. So the importance of Gandhiji's philosophy for adult education is very seminal, like that Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was also a sannyasin, and he you know that a guru, a writer, and a spiritualist, but at the same time he was a naturalist also. You know that Shanti Niketan, that place is the place of Shanti or peace. That in such a place only education will take place. That is what his opinion. So the discipline and the value of education, value-based education, and freedom of language, First, a child has to be taught to use language. That is why 3 hours in adult education. How we were giving adult education was implemented first for writing, and people were trained to write their name first. What is the philosophy behind that? One is language, letters, language, mother tongue. Then, first they are identifying what I am, who I am. That is self esteem, self motivation. That is so learning through the mother tongue and training in language makes a man liberated, make a person liberated, makes an individual liberated to think, to act, to continue education, and to attain cultural aspects. So, freedom of language and the learning of art forms. That is why, as a part of adult education, cultural clubs were created. So many cultural activities were there because the innate tendencies of the people to engage with, to enjoy with, to seek pleasure in life is a motivation for them to take part in adult education. So that recreation clubs were taking a seminal role in imparting adult education. It's on the basis of Rabindranath, that is the implication of Rabindranath Tagore's philosophy of education. Like that, imagination. A writer is always a person of imagination. That imagination is creativity. Only creativity can innovate this world. So the people who are engaged with adult education should have imagination, creativity, and the urge to innovate. Then spirit and mind, which liberates the mind of the people. And finally, as per the Indian culture and Indian knowledge system, all education, the ultimate aim of all education is sometimes an emancipation of the soul or spirit. That type of education is a value based education and morally developed education. That was Tagore's education. So, definitely, a community who doesn't have any knowledge and values can be converted through adult education into a morally supported society or a value based society for a better life, for a better practice to be given to the coming generation, like that. So, more than that, anybody in the field of this adult education, Gandhiji and Tagore is very eminent educational philosophers that we have to learn and we have to consider for framing adult education. Now, we were covering through the philosophy of education. We are going through the philosophy of education. Now, what about psychology of adult learning and motivation? I told you the historical perspectives, the historical aspects, some terminologies behind the development of adult education, all we have learned in the first class. Second day, continuing with the historical aspects and some developmental aspects of adult education, we were directly coming to philosophy of adult education. Now, psychology of adult education. Why psychology of adult education? Or what is psychology? Psychology has hundreds of definitions. Psychology, simply we can say it is the science of behavior, science of mind, science of thought. Hundreds of definitions are given in your study material. Please go through that and learn it. Which one is more adaptable to you to learn, or which one you feel as simple to learn, you learn something. Some definitions you may by heart and use it in the answers you are writing in the assignments and at this time of term and examinations. That will be better. And in education, especially when we are giving training to teachers, the most important aspect we are considering is psychology of education. Why? Every field, without the touch of learning of psychology, nothing is there. Even in managerial sciences, management platforms, in schools, everywhere, at home, at any workplace, we have to consider psychology. Because without consideration of psychology, no system can sustain. because psychology is the science of behavior of people, individuals. It studies the mind of the people. If we are not considering the mindset of the people, how we can proceed in the philosophical aspects, other technical aspects, educational points of view, curriculum, pedagogy, nothing will be workable. Isn't it? So psychology is very important. Here, general psychology, clinical psychology, behavioral, environmental psychology, managemental psychology, and means operational psychology, like that. A lot of psychological types are there. Branches of psychology is there. Here, for us, especially for education and for adult education, educational psychology is the relevant branch of psychology. Means, if we are applying the psychological principles in the field of education, it is called educational psychology. If we have learned, because stages of development is a psychological term, at the same time it is educational. When we are applying this stages of development in the implementation of curriculum and classroom teaching, we are applying psychological principles in the field of education, then it becomes educational psychology. That's what educational psychology. Moreover, when this educational psychology is applied in the field of adult education, that is, or it is dealing with the psychology of adults, that is adult psychology, simply we can say. So application of psychological principles and identification of psychological aspects among adults, that is adult psychology. So without this, we cannot go ahead in the matters of transaction of education among adults. Then nature of psychology. Why? What kind of teaching is going on, what type of learning is going on, and what type of adult learning is needed. That's what these three terminologies. Why adult psychology or education psychology is needed for this particular paper, particular course, MAE 101. Because for any adult learning, if we are studying development of adult education, psychology of adults are needed. That itself is the scope of psychology of learning. That's why I taught you some of the learning theories. Very relevant, very basic learning theories I have discussed. We were studying it because its implications are needed in the field of adult learning. Learning by association, learning by conditioning, learning by doing, learning by insight. Like that. That I didn't tell. I'll tell you what is that. Learning by insight means what? By connecting many things, stimulus and response, response and stimulus, like that, so many things can be connected to study. That is what association theories in learning. Conditioning theories, I told you, how to make training and all, how to practice things in labs, in experiments. All scientific learning is learning by doing, and repetitions, exercises, learning by insight. Don't think that a student is studying what is coming out from the teacher's mouth. No. Most of the time, an insightful learner always contributes his own concepts. He is developing, creating his own concepts. Sometimes immediately we will get one light, we will be enlightened on the concept or the matter of study. The study is very much effective. That learning is their own learning. One great philosophy is there. Nobody can teach anybody. Am I correct? Is it true? Yes. If we are giving something and somebody is taking and mugging it up, means they are not studying their own. They are taking the information from somebody and just making it, stealing like, or the banking of information. No creativity, newness is there. It is not their knowledge. But by insight learning, a student is getting into a level of intuition, an immediate what enlightenment is happening, and that product, that outcome of learning makes him a knower, a person who knows something. That creates a knowledge to him. That is what knowledge. Not mere knowledge, but a constructive knowledge. So this inside learning only leads the child or the learner to insightfulness. It comes from gradual prior learning and meaningful learning when happens. A perception, a particular type of perception comes to the student in the form of insight. For that, motivation is needed. If the learning process going on is a motivated process, insightful learning will definitely happen along with the other association learning and so many other training we have learned. So another thing in the study of our material or the syllabus of this particular course, motivation for adult learning is also to be learned as a psychological aspect. Motivation is a psychological factor. Intelligence, intellect, then our attitude, aptitude, anxiety, everything comes under emotions, everything comes under psychology. Motivation is one of the most important factors. You just think, if naturally going to school is it's a natural process, because when a child attains 3 years, for he is ready to go for preschooling, and the family members all are becoming ready to send him for schooling. But what about an adult learner? This type of thing is not at all happening. If because it's with the self direction only, an adult learner is starting formal learning or non-formal learning, means is adult learning. For that, motivation is needed. In many types of motivations are there. In many forms, motivation comes. What is the functioning of motivation? Without motivation, there is no energy for a person to behave in a particular manner, even though they have interest. If a learner has to be an interested learner, an energy is needed. A motivated energy is needed to act in a particular manner or to behave in a particular manner. That is called motivation. That energy is called motivation. And if that motivation sustains with very much enthusiasm, one child has been joined in a school, and we have purchased a lot of things, bag, school tiffin box, umbrella, shoes, very beautiful uniforms, hairband, and so many that type of motivating things we have purchased, and the child was celebrating to go to school. That and after 2 3 days, she or he starts to cry that the teacher is not good, the nearby sitting child is irritating or doing some mischiefs. What will be the happening? There, the first motivation is not continuing. That is what we mean sustainability of motivation. So, once it is started, it has to be sustained. So, throughout the process, there should be motivation. Otherwise, it directs and regulates our behavior. If the behavior has to be regulated in a positive manner, that type of motivation is needed. Sometimes, at a particular stage of learning, a student will be diverted to some other mischievous antisocial activities. Nowadays, everywhere drug addiction, so many things. Motivation is for that only, not for studying or not for any value based education. So, motivation is a necessary factor throughout the uh, throughout the process of learning. That is, so it is goal oriented. It is a guide. It is a guiding or guidance. It is a direction giving thing, and it is goal oriented. And definitely, motivation has to be uh, framed for a particular goal, for a selective goal. like that. So motivation always initiates action of the students, action of the learner. Otherwise, if there is no motivation, no action will be there. Then what are the different types of motivation? First, you see intrinsic motivation. By the name itself, you can understand what it is. Intrinsic motivation, that is self motivation. Motivation is inside us. Especially, all adult learners are self directive persons. With the self motivation, they are starting their learning. That is there. But along with that, if one person is very much interested to go for study at the later stages of his life, if his wife or his mother or the other members of the family are demotivating him, there is no need for studying further formally at this age. What is the need of that? You don't have any other work, any other job. Like that, if people are telling, and if we are sarcastically dealing their interests and study matters, definitely they won't be motivated. They will they will stop the school going or the continuation of the learning. They will stop it. So, not only intrinsic motivation is needed, but extrinsic motivation is also needed. That extrinsic motivation, that is the motivation comes from outside, maybe from the family members, maybe from the school teacher, or from the peers, whatever it is. School teachers, the school authority, etc. In the form of, for what we are giving awards, certificates, good, like that. If a child who is participating in a sports event or in a game, if we are clapping, definitely the intrinsic motivation will be developed with the extrinsic motivation. That both will work together. So external motivation is also very important in studying, especially at the stages of adult education. It is needed because in a formal education, nobody will ask a learner why you are going to school or college. Why don't you go? Like that, only people. If why are you not going? Like that, only people will ask. Going is a natural thing, but for an adult learner, it is not like that. What is the need of a further learning at this age? People may ask. It is my interest. Okay, that is intrinsic motivation. And from the institution, we are giving a lot of extrinsic motivation factors. At the time of in the classroom itself, when teacher comes and asking questions, we are giving a right answer. Good, very good. Sometimes patting like this. Sometimes we will give some gifts, awards, and in the among our fellow beings or peers, we will be motivated. We will be congratulated. All these are needed for a man. So it's a very basic need for a person. A psychological need is that motivation. Then inbuilt motivation is there in the system itself. If a very nice school with a very nice infrastructure, beautiful other facilities in the school, and the school is welcoming, the whole system is very inspiring, definitely people will go there. They will study. That is why nowadays we are giving advertisements for universities and higher education institutions, even for schools. So many uh, uh, importance we are giving. We are giving importance to this infrastructure facilities. If a school bus is AC, people like it because of the convenience factor is becoming a prime factor nowadays in life. So these all are inbuilt motivational factors. The study materials prepared are very nice. The evaluation system is good. The time and management of the institution is very nice. Definitely, students will be attracted because it is inbuilt motivation other than that of the intrinsic motivation of the person and the extrinsic motivation from the outside world. So, all these are for the development of the interest of the um, learner, and especially in adult education, this is very much needed. No need to tell more. Then, theories of motivation. Psychoanalytical theory is there. Psychoanalytical theory is a person's psychology has to be analyzed first. And psychoanalytic, the topmost psychoanalyst is Freud. Have you heard of Freud? Freud is analyzing the innate urges and tendencies of a person's psyche. What is psychology? It is the knowledge or the study of psyche. It's mind sometimes. Sometimes we feel that it is brain. It's not the cognitive brain, but the mind. So, psychoanalytic theory is analyzing the psychological aspects, the ego, id, and like that, the mentality, the mood, the attitude, and the environment of the person first. Accordingly, education has to be implemented. If a person is a mentally retarded person, special education platform has to be provided. If a person is from a deprived section, that type of what all needs are needed, that has to be provided. So how all these external factors affected a person to develop further, or what is the problem for a person to overcome it, that has to be studied psychologically. Then only education is needed to provide. Another important theories is motivation theories is Maslow's self-actualization theory. Maslow's theory of self-actualization is very important. I'll tell you what is this. This is a hierarchical uh, a figure in of hierarchy or self-actualization theory of Maslow is clarified through this figure. See, what all motivations are there for a person? Maslow says the first is physiological motives, safety motives, love and belonging motives, esteem motives, and self-actualization motives. These are the things in a hierarchical order Maslow has given. What is physiological need? Can you agree with me that if I am telling food, dress, and a shelter is the basic thing for people? Am I correct? Yes, of course. Because how we can teach a hungry person? If a person is needed for food, if a person is needed security, if a person is needed a shelter to sleep well, to be safe from others, that is the basic need. These are physiological needs. Food is a physiological need. Shelter is a physiological need. Security is also a physiological need. That is the basic thing. So, in the hierarchical order, physiological motivations are given first. Second one is safety. If we have enough food, if we have enough dress, if we have a good home. What about safety? We are not safe there by the family members or some external people or whatever it is. Nowadays, you know what is the relevance of safety. At school also it is there. Before studying, the student has to, that is why midday meals and a uniform, government is providing uniform dresses they are giving, food is given, books are given, umbrella is given, even what all things a child needs for their physiological needs are provided by education sectors. Then it has to be ensured that the child is safe, whether it is girl or boy, whether it is an adult. We cannot think that an adult is not needed safety. Yes, of course, till the age of 80s or until the end of life, everybody, all persons need safety. We are going for a night class, there is no safety at all, who will go there? So that has to be ensured. If we have safety also, we have food, we have shelter, we have dress, all physiological needs are satisfied, but we have no safety, no. If safety is also there, we are thinking or we are seeking for love and belongingness. We need the nearest people with us. We need the necessary belongingness with us. We need love from our family members, from teachers, from friends, from everywhere. If somebody is doing something against us, we cannot survive. So we need that love. We need esteem. What is esteem? Self-esteem. It's a feeling of what we are. We have to identify what we are. We have all, but we don't know what we are. That's why nowadays children are the time of examination. That is self-actualization also, but if there is no self-esteem, the student will be sometimes they may commit suicide because they don't have any they are not in a confidence to take things coming ahead. Self-esteem is that the belief, the stern belief that what I am, I can, I can do this. This is what I am. Whatever comes against me, in front of me, I'll be overcoming. Like that, a belief. That is what esteem. That is needed. Finally, only self-actualization comes. If we are satisfied with all these basic needs and motivation levels, definitely there will be self-actualization. Means attainment. If we are this, if I am confident that this is what I am, if I am attaining that stage, according to my self-esteem, that stage is known as self-actualization. So every stage of life, we have self-actualization. School-going children, they have self-actualization in their academic achievements. In a family life, in a married life, we have self-actualization. If one person is not considered by the other, if they are not taken into consideration by the other members in the family, definitely distress will come. We are thinking that I am this one, but I am not considered by my favorite people. I won't be successfully going in our that particular life. This is needed everywhere in life, especially in adult education. If one person is going and studying, if there is no need for that, for the development of that person, sometimes they may not be motivated for to attain that. This is what the hierarchy of Maslow's learning theory of self-actualization. Let us go through the next factor, psychological theory of motivation. This is what achievement motivation theory of Cleveland in 1985. What does it mean? That this theory, the body determines attitudes and interests and explains activities and behavior of people. This is also one of the most important thing. If we have food, we have dress, we have shelter, we have good family members, we have confidence in our abilities and aims, we are attaining it, but everything is there. But bodily, we are not able to do that. What will be done? What will be the effect? And we know, especially in psychological field, the many people are approaching counselors, telling that they look ugly, their physical capacity is not up to the level that they expect. They have so many issues. Each organ of our body, we expect in a good man to be in a good manner. That always makes us. Our teeth, our eyes, everything, even our hair, everything is needed. So our physical appearance and our physical capability is a very big factor for motivation. If we have some inferiority with us, we won't participate in the social events happening for a marriage in a cultural place or in mosque or in church or in a temple. We will be withdrawal nature we will show. In school also some people are like that. So many cases are there in the field of psychology. So that is also a needed thing. Then achievement motivation, that is another type of motivation. Achievement motivation is the motivation for achievement, especially in the field of academic matters. Achievement means the attainment in our subjects, in our study, credits we are getting, isn't it? If we are studying well, we are not getting the expected marks in the examination, that won't be a motivation for us. That will definitely cause being dropout. So that is also very important matter for um, considering the motivation of a learner. This is what achievement motivation. So in the classes, teachers are giving all the motivational inspirations, intrinsic, extrinsic, and all these built-in motivations for the attainment of achievement. That is also a factor. In the academic sense, it is very relevant, achievement motivation. Then approaches to motivation. If this is the importance of motivation, our approach for motivation should be like this. Means how? That's what we are going to discuss next. See, approaches to motivation of adult learners. So we have gone through all the psychological factors, especially the motivation theories, motivational factors, types of motivation, etc. And how these aspects work at the learning of adults or adult education. See, from the first onwards, we were telling that the adults are coming not for simply uh, uh, time management, just not for a leisure enjoyment, but if a need based approach is given, definitely that is a motivation factor for them. It's a motivation to the adult learners. Means if one person is engaged with a work in an open system, we are offering a program, and once they got certified in this particular program, they will get a promotion and their salary will increase. Like that, if a need is there, definitely adults will engage with that type of education. It's what need based. And we should have a friendly approach. If if an adult comes for studying, if we are very strictly approaching them, why did you come earlier? Why do you late? Like that we are asking. Sometimes the person may be in a hurry to reach the study place or the institution after completing his tasks and works, and he has to manage with the um, professional authority and his workplace arrangements are there. So many difficulties, maybe some family matters. Sometimes after going to hospital, the person is coming in a hurry to reach the place. Don't ask why, and don't send the person back. Don't leave him outside the class. Approach friendly, and their adult ego is there. It is also there. Adults won't behave like children, small children. Their adult ego is there. You have to satisfy that. It's also a psychological need. And if one particular person is the next thing, so friendly approach is needed. If a particular person is not in our access, if he is a person who has have some health issues, individual contact approach has to be adopted. Definitely. So sorry, repeatedly given that point, no problem. Consider one. Individual contact approach is needed. Why? To help. That individual help is needed for an adult learner. So I remember that we even in distance education, our sir Dr. M. Rajesh is here with us. On the leadership of him, he made a Moodle platform for approaching the bedridden learners of the system. We approached the bedridden students with question paper. We read it. They were giving the answers using their technological equipments on bed. How uh, happily they were cooperating with us. Imagine, that is individualized contact. If needed, like that, a person who is very old, he is not able to come to the class. Let us go there, give the up to date information and help them to. Or if one person, a friend, a peer learner is waiting for them to bring them along with, like that, an accessibility or an individual contact approach has to be adopted in this learning. That itself sometimes motivate them to come to the class. They will forget all other difficulties. They will come. Then achievement approach. We don't tell them this is just simply for imparting adult education as a policy of the government and all. No, it has to be some beneficial for them. It has some benefit for them, and the approach is a beneficial approach. And we may tell what is the benefit, how it develop the person's individuality, or how it augment the happiness of the person. That has to be interacted. That has to be shared with that person. That will motivate them. Then, a realistic approach. Realistic approach means really they may feel that the things happening in the adult education classes are real. It will happen, not ideological or theoretical. So the experiments, experiences, demonstrations, and the actual hands-on practicalities all comes under realistic approach, and make that this is just not an ideology, but it is really happens, and it is definitely give us some benefit like that. That realistic approach. If some difficulties, if the difficulty from the part of the student, from the part of the teacher, everything has to be shared. Then creative approaches. What is that creative approach? If just we are following a class of an expert, it will be boredom. It will be monotonous. If it is for some creative approach, so many points come to my mind. We were telling about different approaches, different philosophical backgrounds of learning. Creative approach means always motivates the divergent thinking of the learner. If we are giving opportunities for creativity, if the teacher in the adult education class or the tutor in the adult education learning setup is motivating the participants or the adult learners to bring forth the creativity, the innovations and thoughts of them. And if we are able to create a new situation or some new products or new ideas from them, is elicited from them, definitely that will motivate them. If they are allowed to answer, if they are allowed to sing, if they are allowed to create a new situation or make something new, if a poet is there, if all of us are allowing them to write a new poem about the class and present it before the peers, definitely that person will grow. And that itself may be one of the motivating factor to come to the class and to study. So in all ways, the adult learners have to be motivated for further learning, and that is the base for this psychology of motivation to implement in the class. I think you have got some points and you have received some new area of education, means the psychology of education, philosophy of education, and the sociological aspects are there. It will be covered in the next session. And I am very much thankful to you for your listening, and you may please utilize the points mentioned and discussed in the classroom for preparing your assignments and submitting before the authority on time, and to get evaluated and for attaining the achievement motivation of you as adult education learners. And I'm very much thankful to you all for being the part of this classes. And let us see in the next class. Once again, I thank Rajesh sir also for doing all the facilities and being the a background supporter for me to go through this class. Sir, thank you once again, sir.
Thank you for that very incisive session. A lot of aspects were discussed from the theoretical point of view, its application in various aspects of adult education, It was a very enriching session indeed, and I'm sure our learners would also have gained a lot from this session. And of course, the recording of this session will be uploaded on YouTube maybe tomorrow morning, and you will have access to the recordings of not only this but also to other sessions very soon. And therefore, I feel it is a continuous process. Technology enables us to create seamless interaction and linkages. And even when a person misses a certain class, he can definitely go through the recording and come back to the next class without any loss at all. And that is one of the aspects that definitely helps in the process of adult education as well. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that very, very interesting session, very incisive and elaborate. And we look forward to further sessions in the coming days. I suppose the next session is tomorrow itself. And apart from our learners, I too look forward to a very enthralling session in the days to come. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I think you are muted, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. I think we can close the recording, I think.
Sure. I'm just. Thank you.